No, wait one second. Ah, there we go. Good morning, everybody. And welcome on this very important day, the birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Perhaps.
He, ah, ha, 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 ha.
Thank you, thank you.
Someone here is, giving him a shell.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want you to know that behind the scenes there is all this organization.
Again.
Good morning.
People
Good morning.
are trying to make sure this happens in a certain order. But His Holiness doesn't like formality. So he just walks out. He wants to see you and reach out to you. And that's just what you just saw.
Yes.
See you again.
So he's being greeted now by many of his friends. You see Loretta Sanchez on the right, the Congresswoman. You see some climate scientists who are also members of your faculty now joining us because we have a climate change panel coming up.
Comfortable? Comfortable? Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
So no matter how much you try to organize these events, we know who's in charge.
Sit.
To help, thank you for seating. By the way, as you sit down, I should probably tell you that His Holiness slept in until 2:30 this morning, but nevertheless still prayed for 5 hours for all of us, for compassion for our humanity.
Okay. Yes.
Now, let us begin
Very good.
with UCI Chancellor Howard Gilman.
Higher UCI community, it is my great honor to welcome you to our beautiful campus and to the second day of the Global Compassion Summit. It is a great privilege for us to host this summit since our fundamental mission overlaps with the larger themes of this gathering. We embrace the role of convening groups of people who are seeking knowledge and understanding of important questions. And this is an occasion for us to be reminded that in our own way, universities such as ours strive to be models of how diverse groups of people can come together, learn together, and work together for the purposes of forging a deeper sense of our common humanity, a deeper appreciation of the glory of our diversity, a deeper understanding both of enduring truths and of the miraculous new discoveries and insights of our age, and a deeper commitment to addressing the most pressing challenges facing humankind. It is our article of faith that these dimensions of wisdom are to be revealed through empathetic human encounters, philosophical and theoretical reflection and debate, exposure to creative expression, and the hard-earned, rigorously forged lessons of science. All of these elements will be in play over the next day and a half. When we are at our best, institutions of higher education bring into the world people who are kind, thoughtful, inquisitive, analytic, open to new ideas, and committed to the values of a peaceful, diverse, conversational community. These are the common goals that link our university with the Global Compassion Summit. And so as we get underway, I hope you will keep in mind the great motto of the University of California, Fiat Lux, let there be light. I'm looking forward to the new light that will be generated as a result of this summit. Thank you for being here. thank you for your commitment to a more enlightened world.
And now, please welcome UCI Regent Richard Bloom. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you, Chancellor. I can't think of anyone who could bring more light to a university than His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Happy birthday, Your Holiness. This, for me, is both a historic and a nostalgic day. His Holiness and I were both born in July 1935, and we have celebrated birthdays together, 60, 70, 80, and I asked him last year, what do we do for 90? His answer was wheelchairs. But I have a better suggestion. Maybe 90, we walk around the Central Cathedral in Lhasa and save the wheelchairs for 100. I also suggested that we change the date of our births from July 35 to July 55. He said maybe it was necessary for me, but not for him because I looked older. But you might ask, well, how did I get involved in all this? And what does it mean to UCI and the University of California? 46 years ago, I went to the Himalayas as a climber. And it was a strange land then. We now, with the president of our American Himalayan Foundation, Erica Stone, who's run the foundation for 25 years, it's like a second home. But in those days, the trails were narrow. We never saw anybody we knew, but there was a kindness, not in a subservient way by the Sherpas and the Buddhists. And it had to come from somewhere. Well, the major spokesman for that, of course, is His Holiness. But Buddhism's been around for 2,500 years. We wish there were more people that looked at the fundamental message that, which I think is His Holiness's fundamental message. If you want to have a happy life, the best way you get there is by trying to help others. That is what our American Himalayan Foundation has been about, and that is what the Blum Center for Developing Economies is at UC. We started at Berkeley about 7 or 8 years ago. We are now operating in 10 campuses. We, in the last year, have gotten started at UCI, and I'd like to particularly thank Kelly Smith and Richard Matthews for getting this off to a fast start. We think UCI is going to be one of our best campuses. I can't say they're going to be better than Berkeley. I'll get into trouble, but they may in any event. So by way of background, we started our work in Nepal and Tibet with 6 scruffy climbers who came off Everest in 1981 with no money. Fortunately, one of them went in the private equity business. And today, the American Himalayan Foundation has 150 projects. We have 14,000 girls in school that we've saved from being sold into prostitution, and we, because of the earthquake, we've just been there. It's a heartbreak, and we have just agreed to take on 4,650 more girls. Not quite sure how we're going to pay for it, but we'll figure it out. And so that led us to the idea of why shouldn't we start programs at a university and see if kids really are interested in helping the developing world. when I went to Berkeley, you could take a course in art history or music appreciation. You couldn't learn anything about poverty. And I found out years later you still couldn't. So about 6 years ago, we started a center so that you can take a core course, or it can be a minor. You take a number of courses. You have to work for months in a program overseas. And the enthusiasm, because we've had 12,000 kids through our classes at Berkeley, and it's just starting up here. And everywhere we go, we find young people who want to help the rest of the world at a time when everybody has 100 reasons to be down on our society and our future. I see it quite differently, because usually older guys like us, are cranky and talk about how kids don't amount to anything. We're wrong, actually. This generation of students is much more committed to compassion and helping people in need than any I've known in my lifetime. So of all of you, there, I thank you. And I think that's enough, because I think the person you really want to hear from is my old friend, my teacher, my professor, my rabbi, whatever you want to call him, His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
And so now we begin our public talk, or His Holiness's public talk, on climate change. The talk is entitled Compassionate Planet, the Effects of Climate Change and Taking Action to Resolve This Global Issue. And on this panel, there are a number of people who devoted a great deal of time and have made a great deal of difference in raising awareness throughout the world about this global problem, this greatest threat to the future of humanity, which is climate change, otherwise known as global warming. On this panel, I would like to introduce everyone. There may be some people, by the way, because people have been added. No, I think we know everybody here's on the panel. We have with us Isabella Vellacoña. She, in addition to teaching earth sciences and physics here, she is also a senior scientist at JPL, and she researches remote sensing to measure how ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica are being affected by climate change. We have Mia Yoshitani, who is an activist for economic and environmental justice for vulnerable communities, who are going to be greatly impacted by climate change. We also have here Dr. Ramanathan, who is also a member of your community here. He is, of course, the scientist who discovered the super greenhouse effect of linking CFCs to global warming, a very important voice in the research of climate change. And also we have with us the wonderful Walter Monk, who you should know is older than His Holiness the Dalai Lama by a few years.
Yes.
How old are you, sir?
I'm 97.
97.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I know what I'm going to do when I'm 97. I'm going to give a talk at UCI.
And that's right. In fact, I should mention that he works, I'm understanding, 7 days a week to work on this issue of climate change because he wants to complete his research, and you should know about him. And you should know about him that he was also part of the team that helped understand wave patterns that were used to time the D-Day and Normandy invasions. So this man has contributed in ways. You may have heard me talk about Congressman Sanchez, who's also joining us here on the stage, a very important voice as we talk about this issue. It's important to have someone from where you come and what you're doing, because clearly it's going to take people in your kinds of positions to talk about how we can actually make change. We have, of course, your chancellor also with us in your region. So let's now begin our conversation. I think that one of the most important things to understand about climate change is that it's very difficult to see it happening. And one of the problems is that we don't have the ability to see it happening because we only live a certain amount of time. But there are people who have seen change, who have seen it happen. And there's no doubt, by the way, we're not talking politics here, we're talking science here today. The train has left the station. The warming has begun, where now the question is, what can we do about it? Walter Munk is old enough to have witnessed watching this change. Walter, first begin by telling us what the oceans were like when you were a boy and how you have seen them change.
I think firstly, I want to see, you come here, you are
He wants you to
oldest
sit
person.
with him. You are
Oh,
the oldest person. He wants you to have a great.
I'd love
He
to.
wants you to be honored by sitting next to him.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Good, good. Are you comfortable? Good.
I am comfortable.
Good. I imagine
Thank
you are. Would you like to move down one then?
Thank you.
Would you like to move down here, please? Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So the two of you, wise men who who care about the future of our planet, talk to us about what you have seen in terms of what has changed with the climate.
Well, the oceans have gotten warmer. Sea level since I was born has gone up 20 centimeters. And talking about climate change has continued all the time. And I want to tell His Holiness that I walked away from yesterday's discussion to see that I am on the side of saying that the data is overwhelmingly in favor of proving that there has been global warming, there has been sea level rise, that people in their consumption of fossil fuels are responsible. But the question of whether we can do something in time to help is the most difficult one. And I walked yesterday away from yesterday's discussion that the word compassion is the answer. And I think we know a lot more, even if our knowledge is imperfect, about the climate issue and the ocean warming and the data, then we know whether there will be the adequate compassion for people in other countries to help those who will need to be helped in times to come.
So to understand some perspective on this, 97% of climate scientists agree. Politicians disagree, but climate scientists really don't disagree. 97% say that climate change is here and that man-made actions are part of the reason. So now the question becomes, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, since 2000, for many, many years, but in 2012, talked about climate change. You warned that every nation will suffer if governments don't think about the impact, about doing what they can, and don't think about the common interests of humanity, not just their national interests, but the common interests of humanity. And you have said that since climate change and the global economy now affect us all, we have to develop the sense of oneness of humanity. So what is your response to this idea about whether we can do something to change this future?
I don't know. But in any way, you see, we have to make effort. Then even fail, no regret. But right from the beginning, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. That's, I think, the real sort of the foundation of failure. No matter how difficult it is, make an effort, not one time, the second time, third time, fourth time. Usually we say, we Tibetan, we have saying, 9 times failure, 9 times re-effort. So I think the important is your goal is something right. Here, right means this is something benefit, something relevant to our sort of happy future. So now the climate issue, global warming, these I think ultimately question of our survival. So it is something very, very important. And then I usually see telling or expressing till I come to, I mean, I have this meeting with a scientist. I myself quite ignorant. So inside we were in Tibet. Then any water you can drink. When I come outside, and then people say, this water can drink, this water cannot drink. Why? Polluted. So then, you see, I realize, oh, it is so serious matter. Then at the same time, I have this sort of, I think because of the hope, you see, develop. Some my friend in Stockholm, in the middle, there's one big river. Some my friend used to told me, some time back, no fish in that river because too much polluted. Then, you see, gradually some fish reappear because in the riverside, many factories, you see, they make special arrangement, not polluted the water. So that shows, you see, we have, without sort of a close factory, keep factory still going on, but pay most attention, not damage environment. So we have this technology, we have the method. So then, actually, taking care about our planet is something like taking care of one's own room, one's own home, like that. Then one thing I always is telling, the violence, bloodshed or killing immediately struck on our mind. So some kind of, oh, how bad, how to stop, like that. But then the degeneration of ecology, these things, not that kind of immediate striking, but without much notice, it goes like that. Once we notice, it may be too late. So therefore, it is something very important to sort of, to make more awareness the environment issue. Then today's human population, about 7 billion. See, I saw some report, end of this century, human population will reach 10 billions. Even today, 7 billion, there are huge gap, rich and poor. Not only global level, but also national level, like United States, a very rich country. But there are many people poor. One time in Washington, I had opportunity to talk, a public talk. I mentioned this the capital of the richest country. Oh, but the area or within capital or pockets, there are poor people. So this gap rich and poor, not only morally wrong, but practically it's also a problem. So then, say, the proper way to reduce this gap, not some social country, the richer family, richer people eliminate, not that way, but the poorer section of the people's, their living standard must raise. So many years ago, one occasion in Oxford, this is, I sort of casual talk, I think between sort of session or something, some professor say about ecology. So, and also this gap rich and poor. You see, they told me, even at that time, it is 6 billion human population. So the poorer section of people, or global level, or national level, raising. Then he mentioned northern world, southern world, huge gap. So southern world's living standard raise up to the northern world's already enjoy. Then the question, big question, nature resource can sufficient or not. So that time is 6 billion. Now 7 billion. So judging all this, then the environment issue is something very, very crucial for survival. Then I think because I am a son of farmer, so I have sort of more sort of interest, feeling closeness, farmer, when I coming, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, from aeroplane, I saw in the California as a state, lot of area still empty, and some small pockets, some sort of farms, oh, so they utilize this certain sort of technique, water, from, isn't it? So then some feel green, feel happy, something living, very good, productive, some empty, like desert. So I wish more people go there and work. And then recently I was in Australia. There also I sort of expressed the large area of Australia, just a desert. The kangaroo enjoy, but you see, then maybe some Kazachuti, lizard. So actually, so quite big area empty. So now we also have the technology, they transform seawater into sweet water. What do you call that? That I
Desalination.
Oh, that I don't know. You see that once I noticed. You see, one occasion. You see, long journey by car. The sea coast. I think from San Francisco or here or something, many years ago. On the road, one big factory there. Then out of my curiosity, what's this big factory? Then they say, what the factory for this one?
Desalination.
Desalination. So that shows we have the ability, we have technology, translate, transform seawater. Then I sort of expressed this many years ago in Australia, all sides of Australia. You see, make effort. Each decade, few 100 square miles within, inward, all sides. Then use solar power.
Solar power.
the plenty of sun.
Use,
Then build this sort of factory, because as
Desalination.
again, I forget to say. You see that factory. Or then, you see plenty of water. So that same, I feel, you see, California also, I think, you have the technology, you have, I think, manpower. Instead of concentrate on big city, maybe better in these sort of empty land, cultivate land, use seawater, and then, you see, in India also, I often use expressing the real sort of development, or real transformation of India should start in village, farmland, countryside. Countryside, century-old certain way of life. Then some new big cities, always each year expand, more building, more building. So I think whole world, I think we should pay more attention to
Cultivation.
cultivation, and then now the road is from airport up to the city. You see, some area, a lot of, or say the grain, some area, or say the desert. So the same area, so it is depend on our effort. You see, so there is sort of a possibility to, because of the, to grow more trees, more plantation, and farm. So this, since you see, some time back, I feel, you see, of course, I only pray, or because of something like wishful thinking. Sahara, huge area. So use this technology, solar power, and then build this factory. Then, I think, become the desert land, eventually can be green land. That also, not only more people get work and livelihood, but also I think climate condition. Also, I think more green, more tree, I think some sort of some effect. So maybe empty word, I don't know. So I'm using the freedom of expression.
Yes, you are. You are indeed.
Some people, I see, some people outside, they also express using freedom of expression.
Yes.
So inside also I use that freedom.
Well,
Good for you.
let us continue then with the freedom of expression. And Your Holiness, you talked about the moral issue and talked about the many people, the billions of people really, who will suffer if something isn't done. Dr. Ramanathan, you know a great deal about this. Oftentimes, we hear people unable to find a way through the politics of climate change, saying, well, China is really doing a lot of things that are hurting the environment. And then China is saying, well, what kind of moral authority do you have, the United States? Because you're the one who started this whole thing anyway. And we get caught up in all of these sort of national debates. But you were part of the team of scientists who helped Pope Francis, who just recently came to make his encyclical that essentially about climate change, in which he warned the world that it was an impending disaster, and he called on and criticized world leaders for not doing more. You were part of the science that helped him understand, be fully informed before he created this encyclical. What can you tell us about how we perhaps may want to think about what is coming if nothing is done?
Thank you, and His Holiness has already mentioned it, so I want to build on that.
Good.
The first thing not many still realize is that drastic climate changes which we hear about is not going to happen. We're not talking about 100 years from now, 200 years from now. We are talking about 30 years from now. The climate would be so drastically different. Based on my own work, which is collecting data, observations from satellites, ships, and aircraft, that suggests to us this change, which already started, by another 30 years, it'll be so large, it'll be felt by everyone, every living being on this planet. And if we wait till that to show up when there is universal acceptance of this climate change, we won't be able to protect a large fraction of the population. Particularly the poorest 3 billion were still living on 18th century technologies. And mind you, they have very little to do with this climate pollution. And they will suffer the worst consequences. Just to give you one example, an example which is dear to His Holiness, the Tibetan Himalayan glaciers provided headwaters for all the major rivers of South and East Asia. 2 billion depend on this. And that's where we are seeing some of the largest warming in addition to the Arctic Ocean. So now let's address the issue you raised, which came up in our Vatican meeting. By the way, I co-chaired that meeting, and Professor Walter Monk attended that meeting. There's top 1 billion population.
Top 1 billion.
They consume 50% of the fossil energy and are responsible for 60% of the greenhouse pollution. I'm not pointing a finger, because remember, when you point a finger, 3 are pointing towards you. I'm certainly part of this top 1 billion. It also shows a solution. This is the most informed, educated population. We should be able to reach that population with His Holiness' message of compassion. So now the issue is, I talked about what we say intra-generational equity. The other issue is, how about generations unborn? We have already put 1 trillion tons of carbon dioxide and other pollutants. If we continue merrily next 30 years, we would have put another 1 trillion. That will stay for centuries and impact climate for 1,000 years. So generations unborn, we are subjecting them to this uncertain climate disruption. So this is where we concluded in the Vatican meeting. This is the top thought leaders, that while we have science, we have technology to solve the problem, the fundamental issues, we have to change our attitude towards nature and towards each other. And I want to tell this audience, this is exactly what His Holiness has been talking about last several decades. He connected the inner environment with the external environment. It took us 40 years of research to come to that realization. So we need to change our attitude towards nature, and compassion is the way to do that. And Pope Francis emphasized also this. The second is, the solutions are there. I don't want to say it's easy. We switch to renewables, avoid waste, and improve efficiency. His Holiness already mentioned that. The cost of that, if we distribute it amongst 1 billion, it's $450 per year.
Per person?
Yes.
$450 per year per person.
Amongst just the top 1 billion.
Among the top 1 billion, as opposed to the 3 billion you say who are impoverished and who don't have the ability to change it, the 1 billion who are mostly causing it, $450 per person, and you're saying we can implement the change, pay the cost of making dramatic change on our environment?
Correct. I just have 2 more points in this solution. The second step is, we have already put enough gases to heat the planet, what we call about 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-century. When that happens, we have to go back 800,000 years ago to find a climate like that. And we can bend that curve now by cutting down 4 other pollutants, in addition to carbon dioxide, methane, soot, which comes from diesel and cooking, and halocarbons, that was part of my discovery 40 years ago. And then the last, but not the least, is that this warming, which is already in the bank, the poorest 3 billion just can't cope with it. So what we need to do is to give them access to clean energy. His Holiness already beat me to that. He already mentioned that issue. And this is clean energy for cooking, heating, lighting, and getting water. You know, women walk 3 to 5 miles to get water. Remember, I'm talking about 40% of the planet we have left behind. So then you ask, what is the cost of that? Let's assume the top 1 billion would pay for this. It's only $250 a person. And we ask, why should I pay to a woman sitting in Kenya or in Dharamshala? If we don't give them clean energy access, they follow our pathway. In about 30 years, their carbon emission would become so large, there is no hope of solving this problem. So for our own selfish interest, we need to provide that access. And fortunately, those technologies are off the shelf, giving them. So none of the problem about climate change is an unsolvable problem. The key to that is compassion. And we, the top scientists in the world, we had about 20 Nobel laureates, theologians, philosophers. This was May 2014. We concluded this problem now is out of the hands of scientists, even media, or even leaders. It's at the hand of faith leaders of the world. You have to, Your Holiness, persuade the billion, many of us are sitting here, that this is a problem of compassion. Thank you.
The idea.
One thing,
Go. He would have a response.
of course, I often express once my weakness is once open my mouth, then blah, 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 go that way continuously. So,
Me too.
oh, then very good. You see, 2-person, same habit. That's very good, very good, very good, very good. So I just want to share. You see, they try to create this world. You see, firstly, this century should be non-violent century. Previous century, lot of violence. So, violence, you see, war, I think worst kind of violence. But we consider war is something normal. Individual, few person killed, murder, very bad. 1,000 people killed, normal. And sometimes even to the praise, oh, war hero, like that. So I think the reality much changed. Today's world, each continent heavily dependent on other continent. And within the continent, every country, economy, environment, everything interdependent. So whole world, like now that kind of reality. So according that reality, war, destroy your neighbor or other country. In ancient time, destroy of the nation or community which creates some problem for you is your victory. Now, today's reality, no longer that. Destroy, so-called your enemy, is actually destruction of yourself. So that's the reality. So therefore, our perception, our concept, still in our mind of war. So our percept still thinking old way. Reality much changed. So now we must act according new reality. So now in order to create century of dialogue, in order to create a century of peace. So then different nations, I think individual nations, very possible, demilitarize. The concept of war is outdated. So any problem, through talk, through dialogue. So war mission no longer relevant. Yesterday we mentioned first step, nuclear weapon should eliminate. Then gradually the offensive weapon. Then gradually, I think defense ministry, I think change some kind of another sort of work. So then, as you mentioned, I think we can save plenty of money. Each country, I think, except some country is not to spend much money for defense, for war mission. But bigger nations, you see, I think spend a lot of money. In a way, you see, it is a big contradiction. Nobody wants war, particularly completely because of frightened nuclear weapon. So nobody wants that. But at the same time, you see, keep these weapons. So actually waste of money, isn't it?
Yes.
So now, you see, any problem, through talk, including these terrorists, religious reason, bring together. They're also human beings. Their sort of present method is actually very harmful for their own cause. Talk. You see, remain, these are very bad, something enemy side, mentally sort of more distance, then they themselves feel isolated. Then they become lawlessness. Bring together. So that I just want to share, you see, with compassionate feeling, sense of global responsibility. Then, you see, try to make this world more peaceful, more compassionate. Then we can save a lot of money. Then that money can spend like ecology protection, all these things. That's I feel. So I just want.
Very good, very good.
This feeling of global responsibility that you're encouraging, and also Dr. Ramanathan, you're also talking about this idea to sort of see the world as one place and to not see it with divisions, but rather those of us who have power to make a change and those of us who don't, who are the overwhelming majority. It reminds me of an Inuit leader who said to me, Aqualuk on Greenland, when I was interviewing him, he said, "Why should my people, who, by the way, are dying because they're falling through melting ice that they never saw before, who aren't able to hunt for seal as they used to, because the ice is melting so quickly. He said, "Why should my people pay the price for your lifestyle?" He said, "We are the canary in the gold mine, and we are telling you the earth is warming. It's warming fastest here, and it's coming to you. For all of our sakes, the sake of our world, but for your children and for your children's children, it is time to act now." Which brings us to Isabella, I should call you Professor Velikonye. You have been looking at the data, and it's hard for people to understand, and I would hope that you could help us understand how fast the melt is happening. We've been seeing melt, and people who've argued against whether climate change is happening have said, well, there's always has been some up and down with melting. But the 97% of scientists of whom you're, world climate scientists, of whom you are a member, who agree that climate change is not only happening, it's already started, have indicated that there's a degree of melt that's happening that's so fast that we're seeing in Antarctica and we're seeing in Greenland, which is inside the Arctic Circle, that it does not reflect anything we've seen before. Can you help us understand what your science is discovering?
So, what we know, we have now, we're very lucky for this, 40 years of modern observation. And what this tells us, the ice is from the ice sheet that is melting in the ocean is really melting faster than we would have ever thought, based on what we knew before. And this is very important because it's not based on a short period, it's a relatively, long period. And we're seeing, and we know that things can happen very fast on our planet. We know that when in the past, when our planet was about, almost as warm as is, we are almost there, we are almost at the same temperature. The ice sheets melt a lot, and sea level was 5 to 6 meters higher. So we know we're kind of heading there. We don't know how fast this is going to happen because it's complicated to predict what the glaciers are going to do. But we know that this is happening, and because the observations are telling us, what we know for sure, for example, is that by the end of the century, we're going to have more than 1 meter of sea level rise, maybe 2. And this is like a big impact. You were saying before, it's hard for people to imagine. And so, for example, with 1 meter of sea level, you're going to have, it's going to change completely the coastal region, and so the continent are going to be completely different shape. And for example, it's going to have a big impact on infrastructure and on the coastal region, the people that live in the coastal region. And for people that are here, we don't think, displacing is relatively easy. But for example, 1 meter with about 1 meter of sea level, if we go, the San Francisco airport would be underwater. Oakland airport would be underwater, which means the Bay Area doesn't have any airport anymore. The main port here, the harbor, like LA and Long Beach would be flooded. And that's a big deal because about half of the containers that come to the US are from coming to those ports, which means that this will not affect only California, it would affect the entire US, the entire world, because we are that goes from here, and that's a big deal. And of course, as His Holiness was saying, the impact of this is going to be much tougher and hardest for the people, for the poor people, because we're going to have to displace a lot of population, and they're going to have to relocate, and it's not easy to change for the poorest people. And like, for example, sometimes they're going to have to leave their home, they're going to have to leave their country, and they may not have a country where to go. And this is, for example, the people in Bangladesh. Sea level there is going to impact millions of people, and it's going to be and I think that we really have to realize that what His Holiness and you were saying, that is really like they are going to be, the weaker people, the poorest, the kids, the elderly are going to be the people that are going to be affected more. And so we have to just really have compassion.
You're not just talking about sea level rise, we're talking about warming that causes changes in terms of mosquitoes and disease changing. In other words, is there any doubt that large numbers of people will die if nothing is done?
Well, I think that we're adding, the changes are going to be, I would say that there is not, because I don't see how, for sure it's going to have a big impact in terms of, we're going to have flooded region, and so you're going to have more disease, they're going to spread, it's going to be really, a very strong impact. We're going to have more extreme weather event. This is, we know that. We're going to have more floods, more drought, more extreme, weather, big heat wave. Now we had a heat wave, it's like just talking in India and in Europe, we have a big one. But those events will going to be impacting especially, the elderly people, the kids, and the young people, and the poor people. And, I think that, for example, we have, the drought that we have in California. Everybody has heard about this in the news. And what we know, it's been like a long period. And, what we know from the climate model, the model tells us that, this region is going to become drier in the future. It's going to be, and so this process are going to persist, which means that it's going to impact, the economy, and it's going to impact, all, the society, in the region. The Himalaya glacier, I think they're like a striking, evidence. But, because we are talking about ice melting in the ice sheets, and that's going to, a big effect is going to be on sea level. But of course, if mountain glaciers are going to disappear, we are observing that they are disappearing. The data tell us, they are decreasing, they extend. Now we have an amazing set of tools and observation. We're very lucky, and they're showing us that they are decreasing, and they're not just going to raise sea level. The biggest impact is they are a very important essential water supply for drinking and agriculture for a lot of regions. For example, the Himalaya or the Andes are like, I think, the best example of this, where it's really going to have a big impact. And so all those observations together, I don't think there is any doubt. I think that what we have, respect to what we used to have, is that the science, climate change is solid, is mature. What we have now, we have observation that show us the changes are occurring. They are very big, very large, and we should just, we should worry about, because they're going to have like consequence. And they may not happen super fast, but they're very easy also to mitigate, to find a solution. I think this is the time to say, we know that we are causing those changes. And I think that what we have to realize is that we can make a difference. We can just find solutions and take action. And one thing that I find is that I teach here at UCI. I'm a scientist. I love my job. But we teach, and at UCI, we're just educator, there and in the world. And I hope that I'm going to transfer something to you today. But I think that that's very important. I think the first way in which we can make a difference is through education. And young people, the students, they really want to change. They have a lot of energy, they're very smart, and they want to understand what's going on, with the planet and what they can do to fix it. And, to some extent, this young generation has also the economic power, because, they have, a lot of people that, can really make a difference. But it's important to know that everyone, I think that, when we were saying what can make a difference, each one of you can. And that's the only thing that's going to make a difference now. And it seems harder because, we are like older people, if you want, young people want to go there, want to change job. But I think that without each one of you, being aware and just try, to think about how we can change, we're not going to make it. It's not going to be the scientists. And I think that, His Holiness is a blessing that, is just care and has so much compassion, like for the planet, and he brings this awareness. But each of you can really help. And we need to be all, it's not enough, the young people. We need to really create, that's the only thing that's going to make the system change.
Good.
Well,
We'll look to talk to you later about it. That'd be great.
Well,
We'd love to have a
yeah.
solution. Keep going.
Yeah, and so I think that this is really, this is really key, because we have, if you wanted to switch from, I think that we should, we have to switch from an economy that is dominated, by oil and coal to one that is, take advantage of all the clean energy. And we can do. There is a lot of technology, and there is a lot of knowledge that we have already. We need more, but we have to work. We have to invest energy to work on this, and I think that that's really key. And is at the same time, it's an exciting time, because we have in front a lot of innovation, a lot of. I tell the student, you should think about which job you can come out with that is going to make you. Help and compassion for your planet, and also give you an opportunity. And this is what it is. We're going to have new jobs. We're going to have new ways, to help our planet. So we just have to work and look for it.
The window is very short, if Dr. Ramanathan is right, 35 years, you said. So we're really looking at 2040, 2050, 2045, 2050, when you think that we're really going to start to see really even increased dramatic changes. You've been talking about a scenario for the end of the century, so this is kind of a rise in this direction, and it's going to start to, there's not a lot of time. Cool. So then let's go to you, Mia, because Mia, you are someone who has been a successful activist. You've caused a lot of students to come together, to work for justice. It sounds as though the mood of the panel is this is a moral, this is a justice issue, a life or death issue for some communities, and it's also a financial issue. There seems to be the biggest problem seems to be how, and how do we pay for it? People, I think, everyone in this audience is frustrated, I would guess, that to be told that there's a problem that's coming in our lifetime, and for many of us, our lifetimes, and our children's lifetimes, and our grandchildren's lifetimes, and that we feel helpless because we don't know what to do. So we want to be told, what do we do? Mia, can you help us with that?
Sure, let me tell you what to do.
Have fun with this.
I have the solution. I'm glad we're starting here, because it's so important, actually, to be putting this issue where it belongs, which is really centered on equity, on justice, on active compassion. We know that compassion is not a neutral state. It's not a state of passiveness, of watching. It's an active state of courage, of fighting for dignity, and fighting for what we care most about in our hearts. And I actually today have a message. I mean, it's important to start with the science. It's important to start with what we know. And I think that we talk so much about this issue, about this crisis, from the point of view of the disaster, the impending disaster. And I know how important it is to understand that, but I don't think that is what is motivating people to act. I think what is motivating people to act is the opportunity that we have to rebuild our communities, to rebuild our relationship to people and the planet. And so I have a message of hope, actually, and that is, from my experience of organizing for the last 25 years with communities who are already living with the root causes of the crisis. There is the impending sea level rise, and heat waves, and fires, and also the impending economic impact, where energy prices are getting higher, where housing is getting scarcer. But there are people who have been living on the front lines of the fossil fuel impacts for decades, for centuries. People who've been living next to mines, who have been living next to railroads that blow up with oil trains, people who live next to refineries, whose kids are suffering from asthma at the highest rates in the country. And my message of hope is actually, it is where people who have been organizing on the front lines, who have been literally putting their bodies on the lines to stop the impacts of the extractive industry. It is where those people who have been organizing for centuries and for the last decades, where the solutions for our new communities are coming from. So I think that's the most important thing for me, is that the climate justice fight here in the United States and around the world, it's not just a fight against the ecological crisis of our time. It's not just the fight against the impacts. It is a fight for a new economy. It is a fight for a new energy system, for a new democracy, for a new relationship to the planet and to each other, a new relationship to land, to water, to food, that puts equity at the center of, and it's a world where people's lives actually matter, where the dignity of our lives actually matters. And that's happening already right now in communities who have been most impacted. They are the ones who are envisioning, who are creating the resilient communities that we need, who are creating the solutions that we need, because it is coming from a place of compassion, it's coming from a place of deep recognition that we have a dream that's bigger than the crisis that we're facing.
It's what you're talking about is this idea of a more heroic response versus a oh no defender kind of response. It's much more of a heroic for the future, for my children, for my grandchildren. I want to be one who stands up so that so they don't have to reflect, what did you do, Grandma?
That's right.
What did you do to help? Why did you do anything to prevent this from happening? To be the hero. So, and it's terrific to hear that there are these communities that are guiding us. But I think we also want, in addition to those heroic communities, we all want to be the hero. We all want to know. And it's, don't tell me, Dr. Ramanathan, that I've got to change my light bulb. Tell me something much more. I mean, tell me what do we do? You have this huge audience. What do we do? If what you're saying is true, what do we do to actually have an impact, be the hero?
There are many things each of us can do. The first thing I wanted to point out is that while the changes will be drastic 30, 40 years from now, because of the pollution we are putting today. So the action on cutting down the pollution has to start now.
Right.
And some of the simple steps is one of the biggest source of greenhouse gases is transportation. So just buying locally produced products would go a long way.
I agree.
And those of us who can afford it, this really works in Southern California, rooftop solar. And somehow when I see in even analysis by economists and others, solar power is 2 to 3 times more expensive than coal, which is true if you don't amortize it properly. I have a rooftop solar in my house that would pay itself in another 2 years. I've had it for 5 years. And it's warranted for 15. So I'm making money the last 7 years. So but the issue is capital cost. It's the same thing as a woman in a village in India. There are clean cook stoves, and we have done that. But the problem is, it's $80 for her, which is 6 weeks of her paycheck. That's exactly what my solar was. It was 6 weeks of my paycheck. It took me till I was 60 before I could do this. So the solutions are available. And the third is building is one of the main source of, of power consumption. Buildings. Shutting down your refrigerator when you don't need it, shutting down your lights. And if I may announce this, we are sitting in the University of California, Irvine. This UC started a pioneering step. Our president, Janet Napolitano, announced the entire 10-campus UC system would become carbon neutral, 0 emissions for buildings and this. Not 50 years from now, not 10 years from now. In fact, I'm chairing a summit this fall where we are going to bring in corporate leaders, our state government, to see what lessons from University of California could go to the rest of the planet. So I'm just listing you 3 steps because I'm keen to hear what our Congresswoman is going to say.
She's next.
Yeah. But there are minimum 100 steps each one of us can take, depending on how much we can afford. And the last thing I want to say is, it's a solvable problem, but we have to start it today, not wait. Even 20 years would have put tons of.
So you talk about the individual responsibility, the individual choices we can take, and there are others that we can research, but really they're related to the use of fossil fuels generally. You talked about how organizations like, or institutions like this university, large users, large building people who sort of, organizers, what I'm trying to say is institutions that use a lot of buildings can take measures. But really, is it true that much or most of the fluorocarbon emissions are coming from industry? Is that true or not true? Coal burning plants.
Coal burning, the power plants are one of the biggest sources of
So
carbon.
we need is a national and international more, and I'm turning to you, Congressman Sanchez. If the majority of this pollution that is radically threatening the future of humanity, as has been discussed here, and is moving closer and closer before 2050, and raising our oceans by a full meter by the end of the century, is all coming, as we are hearing, 97% of the world's climate scientists all agree that that's occurring. Then I guess, Congressman, I know you can't speak for every single person, and I don't mean to put you, and I do mean to put you on the spot because that's what I'm doing, but I guess to some degree.
What are we doing?
Well, we're not doing enough. So
Right.
what are we doing?
So, first of all, let me tell His Holiness, in my 19 years in the Congress, I have never voted for a war. Just to let you know where I'm coming from. And I sit as the woman to reach the highest perch on all military issues in the Congress in its history. So I have a really interesting perch from which to see all of this. And believe me, we have models in our Defense Department about the conflicts of the future. And there are 2 things that we model in particular. One is fresh water. And the war that will happen, the wars or the conflicts that may happen over fresh water. And I'm so thrilled to have UC Irvine here in Orange County because they have been helping us on patterning the fresh water issues of the world. So there's so much synergy that goes on. The second area of conflict that we see is the displacement of people due to the rising sea levels. Bangladesh, Vietnam, I represent the largest Vietnamese population outside of Vietnam in the world. And you don't think that we don't take a look and figure out where are these people going to go? What if they have no country left? What if Bangladesh is completely underwater? How do you think that's going to affect This will all affect us. These are conflicts of the future. There are many others. There's resources, there's wars over oil, but these two, fresh water and the sea levels, are completely, I think, due to this whole issue of the science. Now, you're looking at someone who believes those 97% of the scientists. So everything that I touch, yeah. Everything that I touch in the Congress, whether it's on the committees that I'm on or whether it's on the other committees that I try to influence, the problem is that there are many of my colleagues, certainly probably a majority, I would have to say right now, that don't believe the science.
The majority of people in Congress do not believe the science.
Well, let's put it
Is that
this
what you
way.
just said?
When the Democrats controlled, and we only did it for 4 years in the 19 years that I was there under Nancy Pelosi, we put up a global warming bill, and we barely passed it. I know because I was vote 219, and it takes 218 to pass in the House. But when we sent it over to the Senate, it was not able to pass.
Is there a reason why they don't believe it? Because it would be very, 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 very expensive?
Well, because it would change. Whenever you have change, there are people who view the winners and the losers, right? You have a dislocation also. So you have, whenever you change things up, you have people who've been doing the same thing over and over the same way. And then you change things, and so they may lose power or money or influence or whatever it is that's happening. So these people want to keep the status quo to a large extent, and people who want to change, I mean, it's never given, it's always a fight. It's always a fight to change the status quo. So we begin with you. We do begin with the students. And we begin, first and foremost, I believe, with education. If we really have the ability to educate people and tell them what's going on, you can do something about what's going on. When we look at the world, and we look at the education levels, we know the thing that influences most the family and what's going to happen with it is the education level of the mother. Of the mother. That's why we spend our money educating girls around the world. Think about that. So education, you know, that we need science.
How about, may I interrupt you, and forgive me that I am, because what you just talked about was attachment, that there are many people in Congress and throughout our country who are attached to keeping things the way they are. The Buddhists would call this attachment. They're attached to the money that they may get, the power that they have, the title that they have, and they don't want to change the system. There is this dilemma of the clock, which takes which means that we don't have time to wait for generations to come. So the question, I think, if we're coming closer, the vise is moving tighter and tighter, is it fair to say that you need, I guess the word is, to have the, to have so many
Don't get
people,
rid of me.
no, to have so many people, what you need is political will.
Political will. And we have seen those fighters that we have in the Congress that do have political will, but we need.
But what I mean is,
you
to get political will, they need you.
You know, we need you.
We need you.
You know, most people don't realize, for example, one of the specialties I have in the Congress is nuclear proliferation and non-proliferation. Okay? I'm always pushing to non-proliferate, meaning, you know, how do we eliminate nuclear weapons versus making more nuclear weapons? Now, the other side, and I'm in the minority, right? The other side, I believe at last count we had enough nuclear weapons in the world, I think, to blow up the world about 23 times. They want to build another set. But if you think by definition, after you blow up the world once, why do you need even the other 22, right? And this is money. These are real billions and billions and billions of dollars. So, you know, having the political will to stand up and say, we need to be disarming. I'm not saying go down to zero. I mean, I wish. I would love to see in my lifetime for my grandchildren zero, but just bring some of that down. Oh my gosh. It's, you know, I have not won that fight.
So to interrupt then, to say, what can people do to give people who are in charge the political will? What gives them the ability to make a choice, not because of attachment or these other issues, but make the right choice Because one can argue people don't want to believe the scientists because they don't believe the scientists because they're not knowledgeable about the science. But it seems to me if you've got the majority of Congress not believing 97% of the world's climate scientists who all agree, who are the educated ones on this topic, and they don't agree with the science, then there has to be other things involved. So how do we help them have the political will, the cover, so that they can actually
The first thing I would
make a
say to
change?
people in the audience is educate yourself. I mean, you obviously you are, but educate your friends, educate your family about what's going on.
But should they call? Should they write? Should they
certainly they should
protest?
call
What
and
should
they
they
should
do?
write. They should show up to our town halls. What happens is that we're all in echo chambers these days, right? It's like if you believe Fox News, all you're doing is watching Fox News, and so it's an echo back and forth. If you believe MSNBC, all you're doing. It used to be when I grew up that we all had the same news anchor and we were listening to the same news. But now all of us are pigeonholing ourselves because we don't watch or where we get our news and everything. So be a little bit more open, educate the people who are around you. I would say that. Secondly, we do need compassion. We do need to understand that we are completely and totally interrelated these days. Nothing happens in one place that doesn't affect us over here. And third, my gosh, if you can vote, register and vote. Listen to the candidates. Do something. We're just politically, there are two things that happen. One, campaigns become incredibly negative so that people get turned off. And when people get turned off, it's the least likely to vote. That's you guys most of the time, by the way, you young people in particular, because you don't want to put up with all the negativity, and so you don't go and vote. The people in power, they know that they can go and vote and they can keep their power. See, you're giving away your power when you don't go and vote. That's what I would tell you.
I think that that's actually right. I think that what people in America don't always recognize is how powerful you are. You are really, as a mass group of Americans are one of, if not the most powerful group of people in the world because of how much you can change the world and affect the world. And yet we all walk around thinking we're powerless, that we can't do things. So Your Holiness, let me ask you, what do we need to do to help our leaders have the political will to do the right thing for our
You
planet?
know better.
Well, she just answered the question saying that we need to write and protest and vote. But these scientists, Your Holiness, are saying there's no time. We have to do this fast. We have to move forward. So we have a problem because there's no time and it's difficult for them to have political will. And we're not talking, by the way, politics. We're not talking parties here. We're talking about the one party, which is the party altogether of all of us. If this is the issue facing all of us, what do we
There are positive things going on. There are a lot of solutions, and we invent them in California. So innovation is happening here. You will invent them.
Maybe the question I should change, Your Holiness, and ask you then, if I may ask you, what would you say to the people who are in charge of the world and leadership in this country and throughout the world about their responsibility to step up to the challenge of the warming of the planet to climate change? What should they do?
I think in 73, my first visit Europe. So in Switzerland, I think Geneva, some of our friend, there are some NGOs. This is some friend. So we just casual talk. Then sometimes I describe my own tongue, 操着去.
Sharp tongue.
A sharp tongue.
Sharp tongue.
Oh, so at our sort of casual sort of talk, I express, now with respect, the present generation at that time, in early 70s, you see, present generation, anyway, their mind more or less fixed. So I have not much hope. I mentioned that. Then one my friend say, I think the Red Cross or someone, you see, I know very well. You see, he is a little bit surprised. As I mentioned earlier, our perception still, this sort of say,
Stuck in the old way.
Stuck in old ways.
Old way of thinking. The reality must change. Then sometimes you see leaders, now for example, Copenhagen summit is about, I think, ecology or something.
Yes, Copenhagen.
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 But then some important nations, you see, they take interest about their own nation first priority. That global sort of interest. So we can't blame them. They have the responsibility to look after their own nation. But judging from humanity's level, then they should take because of the global interest first, then national interest. So you see, these are our only hope through, the more, the holistic education, not only material values, according our lifestyle, materialistic lifestyle. So, plus education about our inner value. Then people from such education, then naturally they, I think they think first humanity, world, planet. The planet happy, each sort of nation or country get maximum benefit. So therefore, I think each nation's, another sort of responsibility is serving humanity, build happy humanity. Then automatically, individual nation get maximum benefit. So here again, you see, I feel the compassion means, you see, a sense of concern of others' well-being. Then that automatically bring sense of global responsibility. Then I think world, like our body, our life, for survival, our body, we need drink or eat because of the food, and food also, variety of food, and medicines, and also exercise. Many things for survival, so fitness of our body. Similarly, the world climate problem is one aspect of problem. There's a lot of violence, these things, also another sort of aspect of the problem. So then, eventually, you see, as I mentioned earlier, end of this century, population will reach 10 billion. Then another 50 years, maybe 15 billion. I don't know how to handle that problem. You see, too much birth control also is not very appropriate. And then best thing is more monks, more nuns. Very non-violent way of birth control. Then you see the warming, I believe, you see the whole galaxies, different galaxies, their position, you see, through millions of years, you see, some changing. And our own planet, the position, you see,
Change.
1,000 years, you see, changing. So maybe,
Some connection.
so that, you see, we can't sort of change that beyond our control. Yeah. But then some portion, definitely, according to these experts, mainly scientists, you see, as you see, all mentioned, you see, our own
Action.
action made some contribution like that. So we have to look all things holistic. Then the generation, and politicians also, you see the generation who grown up that kind of a way of thinking, that kind of lifestyle, then you see, sometimes it is difficult. But then, unless you see, we create one school for politicians. So you see, I think the present sort of the world, you see, many problems, you see, start from top, not from there. So it's difficult.
But
So we can't, you see, so we can't blame these individuals. You know. These people come from the society. A society, such a materialistic sort of thinking, materialistic life, talks money. And in order to get more money, use power. What to do? It's difficult. So I don't know, really I don't know. You see certain problem with sort of, regarding the politicians some problem, then there's Tibetan saying, "Kanang mat kanan esus."
There's a Tibetan saying that the sore inside your mouth needs to be healed from inside the mouth itself.
So you have the opportunity and sort of ability to change.
And you, sir, have your heart in the right place.
we have only a few minutes more left. I know that you wanted to say something, Regent Bloom.
Hello, I think there's one thing we haven't talked about. We can do 100 different things here, but if China doesn't get its act together, it's not going to matter. And and there are useful discussions going on, and the Chinese, I think, now see when you have a city like Beijing where you can hardly walk around because the air is so bad that they're making an effort. John Paulson, who used to be Secretary of Treasury, has been over there with negotiations after negotiations. But if we don't do something about China, which is still opening a new coal plant virtually every week, we're not going to get anywhere. Now, the new coal plants are better, but they're not good enough. But in terms of, in this country, in terms of hydro, in terms of wind, in terms of solar, there's a lot more they can do. And these are good businesses, and they're not just because they're good for the planet, they're just good businesses to be in. I think the EPA standards that my wife, Dianne Feinstein, had something to do with for California has made a difference. But I don't know that we can move fast enough. I've been looking at those Himalayan glaciers for a lot of years now. But I can tell you about the mountains. They don't look any older. Some of us do. But their glaciers are disappearing quickly. So I share the same concerns you all have. But there are opportunities. But I understand what Loretta's up against. It's easy for us to talk about wanting to change here, but if you're from a state like Kentucky where all you do is turn out coal, then you say, well, quit turning out the coal, what do you tell the people to do with their lives? And the problem is, I think coal is produced in something like 40 different states. That's why you have a problem getting the legislation done. So the problems are there. We got to continue to work on them, but don't forget China. And I think India is a growing concern over the years as well. But one of the things that I think in the developing world that is underutilized is hydroelectricity.
All right, thank you very much, Regent Bloom. I don't think Walter has, the smile that went on Walter's face when he sat down next to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I don't think it's been gone from your face very much. You've been pretty much holding hands and enjoying sitting with His Holiness, and it's been a pleasure to watch. So I think Walter got his gift for today, but now we have a gift for His Holiness, and Dr. Ramanathan, do you want to talk about that?
Shall I get that first?
Yes. We have a present for you, sir.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, I have to stand up for that.
Oh,
No, you.
No, you can sit down.
You sit down and I stand up.
two guys with bad knees. We're making them sit down.
I need your help. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Here we are.
So this is a gift from the University of California, San Diego, Scripps Institution of Oceanography. We have world-famous biologists, marine biologists. They go to the deep ocean and identify new species and name them after, well-known scholars and leaders. They have identified. Tell me what's
No, it's not an attractive species. it's but it's very cool. So do you know what's happening here? Yeah. You're getting a new species.
Let's see.
A new animal is being
Named after you. Has your name.
This animal is your name now.
Yes.
What is it called?
There is a reason for choosing this particular species deep in the ocean, living away from the sun. Species like these are the ones which give more back to the planet than they bring in. His Holiness has done exactly that throughout his life.
Yes,
he takes very little and returns in abundance. So, do you want to add anything else, Walter?
No, I think said it beautifully.
So we have named the species Sirso Dalai Lama.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, since my childhood, some sort of insect, like ranya, scorpions, I can touch. Many people frightened. And a snake also. But the caterpillar, I cannot. So recently, when I visited the Australia's center, that was Uluru, the local people, indigenous people, the form of welcoming, you see, some kind of a pot, you see, made by wood. And then inside, some sort of, I think a tree
Skins, no. Barks, tree bark.
Tree barks. And then two caterpillar moving. This is supposed to eat. I really very much afraid. Then I express, you said, very much thank. Then give back, they eat. So best gift. Yes, see, picture okay, but something living, then I really afraid. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Evie,
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Come. Let's come. Harissa.
No, you can't. Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for being here for His Holiness's birthday. And as usual, what happens is that while it's his birthday, we are the ones who got the gift. Thank you so much for being here.